Welcome to the Virtuous podcast. I am the everyday jugglist, Dan DeMarco. I'm here with my co-host, I guess, Hal Gill, the nicest man on Substack, and also Bruno Bettati from joining us from Italy. And today we are talking about this is actually the first ever Virtuous podcast. We came up with the name, I guess, on our last episode together, the last podcast we did. I like the name, and we were sticking with it. So today's topic is actually aliens. That's right, aliens. That's right. And I'm talking not talking about aliens from other countries. I'm talking about aliens from other worlds, other planets, not humans. So intelligent life on other worlds, and talking about the different impacts of if we were to encounter such a species, or perhaps we already have and they're already here. There's many different opinions about this, but I wanted to start by talking about the Fermi paradox, which is, as many of you may or may not know, the question is why we have not been encountered intelligent alien species yet, given the number of stars and the number of planets that we estimate are in the Milky Way galaxy. Why have we not encountered alien species yet? I think the primary reason that most people seem to think is the great distances involved. The age of the universe is such, the age of the galaxy is such that the distances are very, very long between any habitable world, potentially habitable worlds. And that's kind of the prevailing theory. But I'd like to get Hal and Bruno the take on why they think we have not, or maybe they think we have encountered aliens already. Anyone, Hal?
Bruno, I defer to Bruno because Bruno is the one who
Bruno,
started us on this topic.
go for it. Are they here already? Why have we not encountered them, or are they here already? Aliens.
All right, so my turn.
Yeah.
It's your turn.
Okay. Well, I started in this topic with the worst possible starting point, which is Eddie von Däniken, who is I don't like him anymore, but I used to read his books when I was very young. And von Däniken is an archaeologist, and he pretty much went into the hypothesis that we couldn't have built the Mayan pyramids, or the Egyptian pyramids, or the Nazca lines, or Stonehenge. We couldn't have done any of those with the technology available at that time. So his hypothesis is that aliens already came. They came long ago, and they came and they did something and they left, and they're probably not coming back. And therefore, they just left us with a little push, like they gave us a little push on how to evolve. And so, pretty much to them, their contribution is over, and now we're on our own.
Yeah, and he's incorrect. His hypothesis actually is wrong. We did have the technology at the time to do all of those things. It's clearly it's well established, and even before those times, we had the technology to do all the things that were done. I mean, archaeology has established that essentially as a fact. And so the question that I think is insane is essentially that is not the case. These were built by human beings, not by aliens. The pyramids, the Mayan pyramids, the Aztec pyramids, and the Egyptian pyramids, all built by human beings, slaves in many cases, at least in the case of the Egyptians, but they were designed and built by human beings, and we know that from the archaeological evidence and many other streams of evidence. We know that that's the case. There's nothing magical about these structures. I mean, they are magical in the sense that they're technologically advanced. The construction is very, very advanced, but compared to it depends on how you define technology and what you define as advanced. They were also dying of diarrheal diseases on a regular basis that we don't deal with now. We cured those things. We have antibiotics, so it
Right.
kind of depends.
Now, I believe that it is possible that the human beings that built them were a result of interbreeding between extraterrestrials and our forebears, because you see how long we've been here as a species with very little evolution going on. Yeah, and only civilized, if you wish to put it that way, the last, what, 11,000, 12,000 years, something like that, you start to see the beginnings of agriculture and some of the development. So what Bruno is suggesting from via Van Dyken, I can't remember how to pronounce his name, but that Chariot of the Gods guy, there were some things in there about aliens interbreeding with humans, and we are a hybrid thereof. And there's some people that think that there's a certain hybrid class right now running the show behind the scenes in the world stage. So What do you guys want to chop on that one?
Well, I mean, the DNA evidence does not support that theory either. I have to say, if there were an alien species intermixed within our DNA, there would be differences, I would think, that we would see in sequences or in something between people to indicate that there were a group that were different from every other group, and that's not the case. We
Well,
don't
it can be
actually see
really
that.
subtle.
It could be, I don't, well, alien species, I don't know how subtle it would be, unless it was intentional. I mean, perhaps they tried to hide it, intentionally, which you could imagine. But I think again, the evidence does not suggest that that's the case. But now the idea of an alien seeding the worlds to get life started, I think, is plausible. We have the RNA world hypothesis is probably the most well accepted hypothesis for how life began on Earth, but that has to start somewhere. And then before that, you have this so-called clay hypothesis, where there was a certain type of clay that
Oh,
evolved
right.
by natural selection, they say, which is the earliest form of quote life. But something had to start that process, and could there have been an alien species that travels across the universe and drops off the building blocks of life on various worlds? I mean, it's not impossible to imagine. So there you go.
On
It
the
could be
time
alien.
scale
Could
of
be
the
alien, and we could be, and it's not, yeah, and any alien species that can travel between worlds will be so advanced technologically that such a thing would be probably child's play. On the other hand, we could be living in a simulation, as many people tend to think these days. Many scientists as well believe we are actually living in a simulation. In that case, aliens would not be real because the universe would be simulated, including ourselves and any aliens that might inhabit it. So, chew on that for a while.
What do you think, Bruno?
You mean like the multiverse theory?
No, the simulation hypothesis, which postulates that
Ah,
the
this.
entire world, the universe, including ourselves, are simulations. We're living in a computer simulation.
Philip
If that's
K.
the
Dick
case,
definitely thought so, and he's
I
my
mean, there's no aliens that if that's the case. Well, there are, I guess. They're simulated aliens, I suppose.
well.
But
You
there's
all
many
familiar?
variations of the simulation hypothesis. It doesn't have to just be that everything's simulated. You can have partial simulations. You can have we're simulated, the world's real, the universe is real. You can have the universe is simulated, we're real. There's different combinations of the simulation hypothesis that people have described and looked at mathematically.
The
Yeah, but
holographic.
where do the aliens come into the simulation hypothesis?
They would be simulated. So just like in the standard simulation hypothesis, where everything is simulated, ourselves and the entire universe, then any aliens that inhabit it would also be simulations. So they would also not be quote real. That doesn't mean there aren't aliens. There very well could be, but they would be simulated, just like ourselves.
It doesn't ring a bell on me, but um,
I can send you much literature.
Yeah,
There's
sure.
much. But
Well,
yeah,
are you guys
sorry, go
familiar
ahead.
with Carl Jung's flying saucers, a modern myth? And he's basically saying that these are projections of the self from our fragmented consciousness. Basically, will project out into the skies images of wholeness. That's why you get circles, as in the mandala, and the union of opposites within that protected circle. And that wholeness is what we're all striving for. So we project it outside of ourselves and we don't find it around ourselves because of nuclear war and all the threats. He writes this in 1958, by the way, just as you're having that real surge. And I think we talked a little bit about this between us, that surge of UFO sightings that was happening right after World War II.
It seems to come and go. The surge. You had the X Files era. You guys remember that when the X Files was super popular and everyone was getting abducted by aliens, and then it sort of went away, and now it feels like it's back. So
yeah, I'm
Yeah,
receiving a contribution. I'm receiving a contribution from Nate that
yes,
compares your simulation theory to the Turing test.
yes,
yeah, the Turing test, exactly.
yeah. I can say that yeah. It's the question.
Okay, let's test that. Let's test the simulation theory. Has any of you had an encounter of the third type? Have you seen little green men or
I have not.
flying saucers?
I have not seen an alien or seen UFOs, any UFOs in my lifetime. Although I live in an area where UFOs are prevalent, according to local lore.
I
So
live in Washington,
I've yet to see them.
D.C., So yeah, we got UFOs all the time, apparently. But I don't personally have the experience, Bruno. How about you?
Yes, I've had, and I have many.
Not on
Many.
hallucinogenic drugs, though.
Maybe because they like Chile, they like the South more than the North. They like the extremes. They like Antarctica and they like the Patagonia.
So describe what have you seen?
I have
Well,
seen flying saucers, many in several occasions, in formation or alone, and I've seen one pass very low. And what
what did you
I
see
what
like?
I like about the experience, is that it's the experience that questions your regular hypothesis. That it ruins your empirical knowledge of the world. Because if you see one, then immediately you begin asking thousands of questions. Like, are we the most evolved ones? Are we descendants of them? Why are they here? What are they going to do? And what I find fascinating is not so much who are they or why are they here. What I find fascinating is the effect they cause on human consciousness.
Yes.
Because basically, a very basic, a typical Hume hypothesis will be you're sure the sun will rise and fall because you see the sun rising and falling every day, right? But what happens if one day the sun doesn't come up? So same thing with flying saucers. If we have the chance to meet a species that might be more intelligent than us, pretty much our whole conception of the world crumbles because we live every day thinking that we are the most evolved species. Are we?
Don't seem very evolved to me.
Now, it's primate behavior. And as I was quoting to you guys before, Dr. Morton at William and Mary observed that man is the most advanced creature that has yet come forth on the earth, but only man has said so.
Exactly. Only man has said so.
Right. So we also have
I
more
guess.
from Nate. Back in 1987, he believes he was 8 years old around the time he had cattle mutilations popping up in the northwest Missouri. I've heard of those around the town of Osborne. Seen a
Hmm.
saucer shaped craft with his mom and dad and sister standing on the back deck of their house. It was flashing red, yellow, and green lights, and it was a good mile away. Sounds like a police car. Oh, green is not unusual. But I don't know. You had your experience, Nate, and the mutilation. Why would you travel billions of miles to mutilate a cow in a field and not actually talk to anybody? It never made sense to me. This mutilation of animals.
Yeah. So Bruno, how old were you when you saw your saucers or when you had your saucer at the
11,
first time?
11, 12 years old, very young.
You're
I
also
was born
young, and you don't think that was
a
part
little.
of the. You're convinced it was not some sort of a, I don't know, imagination. Imagination. I mean, imaginations are strong at that age, of course, and you're convinced it was real.
Uh, well, memory fades away. So yeah, now it looks like a very old remembrance. But no, I was quite convinced of what I saw,
Okay.
and nevertheless, I insist in the hypothesis. For example, right now we're in such a mess in the world, and
Yes.
we have wars and we have famine and we have narcissists on power, and every time we think, how do we solve this mess, and I would say that if a flying saucer would arrive, it would immediately swap the concentration, the focus of everyone in the world into this subject matter, so the appearance of an alien will be quite welcome now to me.
I get that. I think that's where we really started the conversation. It was along the lines of the movie from the 50s. What was it called again? The Day the Earth Stood Still?
Yes.
Right.
Yeah, the day the Earth stood still is a very peculiar movie because when it appeared, that H.G. Wells had already done War of the Worlds, and we already had this idea that they were going to come and colonize and kill us and take away our planet. And this movie, which in its own time was very polemic, it wasn't well taken. It was super political because the flying saucer landed in the mall between the Washington Monument and the Lincoln Monument, and it would land there in the middle of Washington, and the space guy would come out with a huge robot and he
Mhm.
would coerce. He would say, "We will speak to you, but we will only speak to all the leaders of the world together. And if you don't do it, then the robot here will kill you all." Which is a very peculiar premise, because and the movie starts with the problem. Okay, the movie says it's impossible to bring all the world leaders together. They will not do it. Some will never come to Washington, and if they do, we have the language problem. So it was very funny that if an alien would come, we would never be ready to interlocute with it. Who would speak on behalf of the human race with the aliens?
Actually, there are protocols for that. I did look that up, and there are protocols that we don't have any unilateral response to any extraterrestrial signal coming in. If it ever comes in, we have to, do a great deal of work to make sure that it is valid. And, with SETI, the search for extraterrestrial intelligence. So there are protocols set up internationally for this possibility.
between certain nations and certain peoples.
And
But
you
yeah, the whole world is not the case. I don't. And I think my favorite alien story is the actually the Twilight Zone episode, "To Serve Man," and I think it's realistic in many ways because
To serve
you have an
man.
alien species. Yeah, you have an alien species who comes in peace, apparently. At least it's thought so, and they help, they cure diseases, and they help humanity, end wars and all these other things. But the lead guy, he carries his book around with him, and they can't, no one can translate what it says, right? Because and he's always looking at this book everywhere he goes, in front of Congress, all these places he goes, he's got this book, and then finally, at the end, they decode the title of the book, and it's to serve man, and they think, oh, that's great, to serve man. It says how to serve man. But of course, in the end, the ironic ending is it's actually a cookbook to serve man. They're taking human beings to their home planets to eat them. And that's the kind of I really think that that's something that I know it's corny and goofy, but it's a cool idea. But I think in an abstract way, it's the idea of not being able to understand an alien's intentions at all. I think is really true, because I think if an alien species did arrive here, and no matter what they said, I would be suspicious, very suspicious of what their actual intentions are, because we really wouldn't have to wait to know what their intentions were, because, especially if they're so advanced technologically, well beyond what we can accomplish. And if
Yeah,
they're
to be
traveling
able to get
interstellar,
here.
to be able to get here, that must be the case. So it might look like all's hunky dory, and they're here to be friends, but at the same time, they might be doing who knows what. So I just think it's those kind of things are hard to wrap your head around how we would deal with that, because there's no way to know.
Were you all tracking those extraterrestrial objects that have cruised through the solar system lately? You all
I see
familiar with
news, I,
those?
s- I see news stories that pop
Three.
up all the time about these things nowadays.
Well, there's been about three of them so far that we
you
definitely
mean
know came from outside of the solar system, cruised through and left, and fairly recently, right? Oamo
well,
was the first one. Go ahead.
yeah, you mean the interstellar ones? That's what you mean, yeah.
Exactly. There's been like three that have been identified as interstellar comets or asteroids or whatever. Oumuamua was the first one, which was really elongated, long, thin thing, kind of like our cigar-shaped UFOs, right? And then there was another one, more recently, a large one came by that appeared to be accelerating in ways that didn't look like it was natural. That's what they said, but I never really heard much more about it. And I doubt if they were actually from any intelligent thing. It's just objects. And we've been gotten better at detecting things, right? So the more you're better at looking, the more things you're going to see.
That's for sure, and that's a fundamental problem in the world of detection, in all aspects of detection. Is the more you look, the more you find, and it's easy to take a noise and think it's a signal. That happens all the time. So yeah, you have to be very cautious interpreting those kinds of things.
Well,
But sometimes they're real, though.
fair,
Sometimes they can be real. So,
fairly speaking, the main problem would be how to communicate and how to show that they come in peace or not.
right.
And to this effect, I do like a lot the hypothesis of third close
Yeah.
encounters of the third kind, which is that they would communicate through music, which I find a very beautiful hypothesis because it would probably work. I mean, if there was a way to communicate with us, music would be actually a very, very good way, to try to establish some kind of harmony.
Astrology might be another good way. or Tarot even. There's lots of different ways you could imagine an intelligent alien species may want to communicate that are unusual or non-typical
Well,
because
we have
of other
tried,
things.
and the signals we've sent out, as you know, I think on the Golden Record and
Yeah,
Voyager is out there, and we've got 5 interstellar probes at this point. Dawn, the 2 Pioneers, which are defunct, and the two
I understand.
Voyagers, which are barely functional
Yeah,
and won't be soon. But they will last till the heat death of the universe if nothing happens to them in the meantime, and they're unlikely to encounter anything in their voyages.
yeah.
Space
Our
being
voices, of course,
vastly big. Go ahead.
and as again, our voices, the signals from our planet Earth are transmitted out into space on a regular basis as well.
Yeah,
And
sure.
someone
And the
somebody
radius
could
only
us
so
to.
far, right? The radio
Right.
waves about 100 light years now.
Yeah, and we can. Our voices might be out there somewhere. You never know. So, there you go.
But
So,
there will be evidence of intelligent life then for sure, or at least
yes,
intelligent nonsense.
correct. That's right. That's right. Yeah. What if you were the one person chosen to be the ambassador? So an alien shows up at your house and says, "You're the one, Hal Gill.
Well,
We are
that's
going to
it.
communicate with
I
Earth,
mean,
with planet Earth through."
it's
Yeah.
already
How
happened to
would you?
Nate the Blind Stonecutter.
Right. And I mean, how would you react to that? What can you really do? I mean, they'd have to demonstrate, of course, that they were legit somehow, right?
What do you think, Bruno?
Or you just be, or yeah, or you, Bruno? What if they said, Bruno, you're the man. We need you to help us.
I'd tell them to take me away. There's nothing to see here.
Nothing to see here. Move along. Nothing to see
Let's go,
here.
let's go to the next planet, please.
Yeah, right. I think I might,
You came
might ask for a ride as
here.
well. Can I get a ride?
You're
Please, Mr.
too late.
Spaceman by the Birds springs to mind.
Yeah, 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 yeah. I'll take a ride. All right.
Do you know
I
that
don't know.
song, Bruno,
Close.
by the Birds? Please, Mr.
What song?
Spaceman, would you please take me away?
No, I don't. But yeah,
It's a great one. I'll
always
have to send it to you. Please, Mr. Spaceman. Look it up on YouTube. It's great.
So
And
we
it's,
have, we have
in
a,
the,
hmm?
in the
sorry, go
Earth,
ahead.
in the day the Earth stood still. This is the problem, which is very Hollywood-esque, the way they look at it, because it's a common person that receives the request to gather all the leaders, and the person is a boy, and his mother. She's a
Mm.
secretary that works in some kind of agency. So she goes to the agency to try to convince the American government to gather everyone, and then all the American government begins giving all the explanations as to why that is impossible. Imagine if it was Trump, the person that was chosen to speak to the aliens.
I'm game. Go ahead and imagine that for us.
Yeah, what do you think would happen there? How do you think that would go? All
we
right. I
would
mean,
we would
really well.
tell the aliens, we would tell the aliens, take him away.
Yeah, that's right. They would say no, no, sorry. They might just turn around. Yeah, no, we'll pass. Anyhow, it might be good. It might be good if they come scare them away. Anyways, I think Nate. I saw this question here. I'm just looking at the chat here. Nate asked about the singularity, which is not necessarily on topic here, but it's a little bit off topic. But it's a good question about and people singularity. It depends how you define it, of course. But most typically, it's defined as the point when runaway computer growth results in basically a world where artificial intelligences or machines run everything. They basically take care of people, and we're free to pursue our intellectual and creative interests as we're taken care of by our robotic overlords who are good, good. Or the other version is where you were slaves. So there's sort of two versions, but I don't think we are coming to a singularity in that sense. I really don't. I just don't see it. I mean, my robot vacuum is a great example of why I don't think that because again, it just shit the bed. It's the third one I bought, and robotics is so far from what people think it is that it's got a long ways to go. It really does.
I did hear recently that you could just encircle a Waymo car with a ring of salt and it would just freeze it in place. So
Yeah.
I don't know if it's true or not. Um, but I do think that we do have the capacity to use our technologies, whether you want to call them an artificial intelligence, I would call them more information processing. to achieve a new millennium in which abundance is the order of the day, and we do take care of all people and all life on the planet in a much more responsible way than we're doing right now. And I've seen little bits of trends towards that. We don't need necessarily aliens to bring us together. We need to talk amongst ourselves, like Bruno and I are doing right now. He might be an alien for all I know with those glasses. It looks like it. But you get the point. I mean, everyday junglist definitely has lizard aspects to him. So I don't know. I think we can talk to each other and form a positive kind of rational stewardship of this planet without necessarily needing alien encouragement to do so.
Sorry, guys, I just had a massive cat fight break out, so I had to go break it up. But they're
I,
fine, both fine.
I also
Literal
like
cat fight. He doesn't
Yeah,
mean like
literal cat.
against
I like
Yeah,
animals.
literal actual cats. Yeah, yeah, actual cats.
Go
Are you
ahead, Bruno.
back?
Yeah, he's back.
I'm back.
He's back. Okay.
I
I
made
like
my
the topic of
mission statement.
I like the topic of singularity because I think singularity is a myth, and it is a myth because as Jung said, we nobody has sorted yet uh, what creates conscience, and certainly artificial intelligence is everything but conscientious. It is either a repetitive algorithm or it is a simulation of how our brain works. And I think that, as I've told you before, I think a singularity will happen when we all become so stupid that we believe that artificial intelligence is smarter. So this is a race for making us all idiotic. Now, in many of the the bar will go down. Singularity is a way to bring the bar down, not a way to bring the bar up. But in the majority of literary science fiction,
Mhm.
in the majority, I would say, yeah, in the majority, aliens immediately show the capacity of telepathy. That's a typical characteristic attributed to aliens, that they can communicate non-verbally and that they can communicate somehow reading the mind of the other person and letting their mind be read by the other person. So probably I would say that if aliens came now for this moment of singularity, it would be to tell us that we already are in singularity. We just haven't developed that power because, to a certain extent, the idea of a supercomputer that can do all the processings and all the calculations and all the computing so that it has all the thought of the world in one single data center. This idea that all thinking can be construed into one single machine, which seems to be the myth of singularity, can be immediately destroyed if we connect with each other. If
Right.
each one of us could be each one of us could be a GPU, each one of us can be an NVIDIA chip, and each one of us could connect with each other immediately, and therefore we wouldn't need all this computing and all this electricity and all this water. So I think that if aliens would come, they would teach us, how to do singularity from our own brain.
Are we not already doing that to some extent? I mean, by the dint of the internet when that came along in 1994, and now Substack here feels like the early internet to me. We're connecting us in Tijuana, DC, and Italy immediately, and having the ability also to see each other like we're doing now, which is all Dick Tracy stuff to me. Then we have the ability to read each other's body language because so much of communication is not what we're saying, it's how we're holding ourselves, it's our expression. It can be misinterpreted, obviously, because I know that in my case, I have given off vibes to people in the past that remind them of somebody else in their past that wasn't nice to them. And therefore, they hate me. They project that onto me. I think there's a lot of projection that happens too, of course. And I could go on and on. I probably will if I'm not cut off soon.
So, bro, I think you said some smart things there. But one thing I caution is the comparison of people and machines, computers, especially the human brain, computer
Right.
chips, because fundamentally, and this is the thing that people always, to me, it bothers the heck out of me, biological organisms and dead things. There's a major, major categorical difference between something that's living and something that's dead. And a computer is dead. A human
Yes.
being is alive. Okay, and that is a logical category difference. And so you can make analogies between those two categories of things, but they're different things. Fundamentally, they exist in different logical categories. Okay, so they're not the same, and you can't say they're the same. You can make comparisons, yes, it's fair, and you can make analogies, but they're not the same at all. a human brain cannot be reduced to mathematics and statistics. A computer chip can. It is, in fact, a computer program is composed of algorithms, which are math and statistics. You cannot
Right.
reproduce. You cannot reproduce a conscious state and a cognitive state based on a series of equations. But you can do that in a computer.
Yeah,
That's a fundamental difference.
one
Fundamental
of
difference.
my early podcasts was with a person who said, we really don't know what's going on under there. I was like, yes, we
Underwear.
do.
We know exactly what's going on.
We
This is
know
another
exactly.
myth. And another myth about computers. Like it's
Right.
it's too complicated. We don't know what's happening. We know exactly how computers work. Exactly. We
Oh,
designed
yeah,
them.
we had
We
that
built them.
conversation, you and I, before.
I've written about this as well. We know exactly how they work. It's not too complicated. It's complicated, but we understand it, and we've not. It's not gotten to the point where we don't understand what we created. No, we understand it big time. So don't that is a fallacy, and that is an argument that needs to be put to bed because we do understand it, and the fact is, and we know exactly how it works. The human mind, on the other hand, we do not understand. We don't know exactly how the human brain works. In fact, another network theory, which is another thing that's often cited for artificial neural networks, the network theory of the brain is only a theory of how the brain works. It is not established fact that it is a network. There's a network node system like in computers where that's an established fact. They work on networks. The human brain may or may not work that way. It's still not. There are other theories that are equally viable, the competing theories that as to network theory, and there's no way to adjudicate what is correct right now.
Integrated information theory also has been sprung up as if you integrate enough information, consciousness basically manifests from that. I don't buy it personally. Bruno, what do you think?
I mean, I agree, Dan, that it's a reductionist metaphor, but the metaphor, and of course, I agree with you, but maybe I should change the metaphor to, I would say that one of the ways in which we have focused our togetherness, how to live together in this planet, is the problem of interconnectedness, and the problem of interconnectedness has started with magic and then continued with tradition and myth, and then it went into the internet, and now we're in this AI thing, but the problem stands still, which is how do we agree? It's also the problem of democracy, how do we agree? How do we ensure that we go for the right choice and learn how to live together? So yeah, I'll modify the metaphor to the fact that how do we make our brains interconnect with each other? Imagine, for example, if right now, for example, internet, due to the dot-com bubble, internet exploded technically, in the sense that if it wasn't for the dot-com, we wouldn't have such a quick spread of the internet network all around the planet. And now we have all these subterranean cables that go under the seas, that connect the different continents. And finally, we're all connected with each other. So what would happen if tomorrow, due to war, suddenly all these cables get connected, we lose internet, we cannot continue to have this podcast, and we go back to the 80s where the only way to talk to each other would be via a letter, a postcard. No, because even
The regular phone.
Yeah, the long
there's no
distance
phone.
telephone call was so expensive we couldn't
But
do
there
it.
aren't-
So card and letter,
Yeah.
letter
But
campaigns.
there aren't any. Yeah, there's no phones any lines. The phone lines have all been.
I am talking in a world where there's no telephone, no
And
internet.
postal services and postal services
Yeah.
have degraded substantially now.
Yes.
So we have
Okay,
that.
so my question would be, how would we go on if all interconnect, all the TICs, all technology for information and communication would be cut? What would happen?
Shortwave radio.
Okay.
Return to shortwave radio.
Very technological
I think
question.
that's a good question. But the thing is, a lot of people, for a lot of people,
see Independence Day?
That's right.
They used Morse code to communicate with the Russians, who said, well, the Americans say this, so it must be true. I saw that with a Russian. She was furious.
So I think you're right, bro. The thing is, I think a lot of people today, even with the internet, are not connected with people at all. They are disconnected in a big time way. So, and I think it's great. I love that we have this podcast, and that's why we, the Virtuous podcast. That was one of the point here was to try to connect And because people don't have networks, I mean, they say they have networks, but they're not real. I guess if they have, at least that's my take. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I mean many people probably do, but it sure seems to me like people are very disconnected from other
Insulated.
people.
Yeah, the
They're insulated,
insularity.
even though they have all these technologies to connect with other people. They use them for either the wrong thing or I don't know what the deal is, but it just seems like they're not being used to do what they can do, which is
Well,
something like
my
this.
psychologist friend says that most of the oxytocin is not getting generated now. That makes us feel good about each other because most intimate relations are happening via pixels. They're not happening via person to person contact and physical proximity.
I don't know if that's been proven that oxytocin production does not happen with with electronic communication. That's an interesting hypothesis.
Well, I think
I don't
actually there
know.
is some research into that the eye contact we're making right now is not generating the kind of oxytocin it would if we were at a cafe.
I'll look into that. That's interesting. If you could find that for me, Hal.
I have to
But
research it too. I think it was in Psychology Today, which we don't trust much.
but still,
So don't trust
if this is
anything
a,
anybody publishes, folks, or anything we say. Do your own research.
well, you can trust me. That's it.
Well, you can try to trust Dan, but you got to research him too. I mean, a lot of the stuff he says is right. That's for sure. But
Most, I
I
know all
think
of
that
it.
panentheism is also a possibility that there is a consciousness within all things at different levels. So there's rock consciousness, and there's worm consciousness. There's
Yes,
different levels of
bacteria as
consciousness.
well.
I mean, pigeons see a very
So,
different world than we see.
uh,
And so I hear. I don't know how somebody found that out, but I heard it on Bird Notes, so it must be
it
true.
became a yeah.
Sorry, I'm taking us afield. Bruno, what do you
Well,
have
maybe
to offer?
so,
What do I have? I have the idea that if we would get, I mean, leaving aside the negative consequence of being so connected, but at the same time disconnected, still we are more connected than 200 years ago. Maybe in a lower capacity without oxytocin, without the presentiality of each other, but we are more connected. We can reach our old friends and we can write. I mean, we are, mathematically we are in a better situation of interconnectedness. Nevertheless, I would say that if this would get cut, my hypothesis is that immediately our brain would begin to develop the capacity of telepathy, and that I think is already happening, and it's happening in many ways. Perhaps due I am the hermit of this group. I am the guy that lives in a tower and I never talk to anyone. So I've spent 3 or 4 years in loneliness and solitude and silence, and therefore I've had a lot of time to explore this. And first thing I would like to talk to you, since we all have them, first thing I would like to talk to you is cats. Cats, our little pets. Our little pets are very good, I would say, in training telepathy. And I've experienced it in many ways. For example, when you feel observed and you feel a tingle in your back, you turn around and there is a cat looking at you, okay? Or any kind of animal, but
Look,
and so the cat has called you just by looking at you. And another one has been, for example, when I have many cats and sometimes some of them get lost. So I sit on the entrance of my house and I begin to focus on the cat, and I begin particularly to focus on the eyes of the lost cat. And in 10, 15 minutes, the cat will come back on its own, like I would have called him with the mind. Another one, which is actually this has more to do with the field of work of biologist Rupert Sheldrake, which is a telephone telepathy, which happens a lot. For example, I haven't heard of a friend for 10 years or 5 years, and suddenly, for no apparent reason, the image or the remembrance of this friend comes to my mind, and in the next 24 hours I will get a phone call from this friend. Has this happened to you?
yes.
Yep, for sure. It has.
Okay, all these little phenomena points to the fact that there's something developing on us, because these are capacities that we regularly do not consider among the five senses, but they are some kind of sense. Some people are actually speaking about the sixth sense and the seventh sense, in the sense that beyond the five regular senses, we can perceive through other senses, and these other senses are underdeveloped, but they are part of our brain. Fortunately, artificial intelligence has not even begun, investigating this field. But I mean, constantly, every day, I have some kind of ESP, extrasensorial perception. Every day. It happens
Mhm.
all the time. Particularly this two that I tell you, the communication with animals, and also the sudden remembrance of somebody I haven't seen or heard of that contacts me all of a sudden, and then you begin talking like, why are you calling me? And they go, oh, I just remembered you. And you go, yeah, but when? And they tell you, well, a day ago. And you say, well, I remember you 2 hours ago. So there is also, I would immediately add a little element, which is telepathy is not instantaneous, which is how we've seen on the movies, like you see the alien and the alien talks to you and the communication is immediately. I would say that telepathy certainly exists, but telepathy has an interval. It is like the traveling of a message that takes a little bit. It doesn't come instantaneously. And perhaps we tend to think of telepathy as something instantaneous. We're on the wrong track.
Field of consciousness, I'm beginning to hear, in which we're all connected by this, Akashic field. You've probably heard of the Akashic records. I don't know. I like to read about these things. I am unsure if it's true or not. I'm very skeptical about all of it, but I did have the experience. And when I have that experience, of course, it's my projection onto the experience. So I can believe it potentially, but I also have this tendency myself towards a skepticism. Dan, what do you say?
I have I very much believer in this in different ways. That I have a if we want to call it a psychic power, if you will, if you will. I believe it has to do with it has to do with, and I've written about this. I wrote a story about it, and I'll put it in the chat. But it's essentially if I'm on a telephone call, specifically with a group of people, and there's a person presenting information, like giving a say a presentation, technical presentation, for instance, and the person gets stuck, I have the ability to get them unstuck. So I feel like I can give them the words to say, to the next words that they need to say in order to get unstuck. And I know it sounds goofy. It's stupid. It doesn't provide any benefit to anybody. It doesn't provide any benefit to the world or to me or to anybody really, except for the fact that it's interesting. And I've done this many times, and I know for a fact that it's something. It can't just be coincidence that the exact words that I think the person should say, they then say. And it's always with a group of people on a phone, and usually the further away the person is, the more impactful I would say the effect is. So and it also, with the more technical the topic, I think the more impactful too. I don't know if that means anything or not, but in any event, I'm definitely a believer in this. Putting words into someone's mind and then them spouting those words back, I think is something people can do, including myself.
Hmm.
Well, I disagree with you in the sense that experience that you have, which I've also had, like guessing the words that the other person is going to see, that's going to
It's not
say.
guessing.
It's
Not guessing.
false moment.
It's
It's
not
knowing,
guessing. It's telling. No,
gnosis
it's not knowing or guessing. It's telling them what to say.
through
That's the
your
difference.
through your mind
Let,
without speaking.
Yes,
let me finish
correct.
my let me finish my let me
Sorry.
finish my point.
Go ahead, please.
Okay.
Please.
The way that happens, in my point of view, is very similar to the phenomenon of prediction, which is how the LLMs work. It is also how you play a game of chess. Lately I am a terrible chess player, and I've always wondered, why am I a terrible chess player? And I think it is because when I am playing a chess match, I am thinking about what I am going to do. Should I move this? Should I move that? If I do this, what will happen next? Maybe I should do this, and then on my next turn, I will do this other and on this other. But I've been looking at a lot of documentaries, particularly documentaries about Bobby Fischer and about Garry Kasparov, and also this new guy Magnus Carlsen, and all the polemics that have happened lately in the world of chess. And I've understood that good chess players are not thinking about what they are going to do. Good chess players are thinking what the other guy is going to do. So they're trying not only to guess what the other guy is going to do, but they're actually trying to provoke what the other guy is going to do. And therefore, there is some similarity between the way you play chess and the way LLMs guess what you want to hear. So I wouldn't consider, predicting predicting language or predicting a moving chess is not exactly like telepathy. That is why I make the point on the concept of interval, because also when I get the remembrance of a friend, or when I feel that the cat is looking at me, they do not correspond to prediction. They are actually acausal. There's no causality, whereas in what you're describing, there is some kind of causality.
Acausal. Okay. Well, I think I just remembered something that my ex-wife used to be able to do. She would envision something and she'd go to a thrift store and there it would be. And she believed it was like a magic box. And then I told her, this is simply you, you know, basically tuning yourself to see the thing you're looking for. And it never worked for her after that time. I ruined it.
Oh, yeah, I mean, I'm a
It's
scientist.
predictive analysis, right?
I am the most skeptical, as you guys know, I am the most skeptical, very skeptical person about
Uh-huh.
everything. So, and a
And
scientist.
annoying,
And so
annoyingly
annoyingly
skeptical.
so, annoyingly so.
I don't
So the
know.
fact that I have conducted many experiments, if you want to call them that, on this ability, and
On this
I
ability.
absolutely believe it's real. And so, but,
Let me say
again, I can't, like anything, there's no 100%. Like anything, even in science, of course, there's no 100%. You can't say for
no.
sure. Nothing's proven, but the number of times and the specificness of the ways it's happened is
So
not
make
a
Bruno say
chance,
something.
and prediction does not account for it. It cannot account for it. But I understand. I appreciate Bruno's comments, and I understand where he's coming from. And I think, yeah, that's the first thing I would say too. It's just you're guessing. It's pattern recognition. You know what the person's going to say because historically that's sort of what people say in the situation, and that's just how we build these patterns up in your mind. And you do that. Yes, there's no doubt about it.
So we've been on we've got about 14 more minutes to our hour. And I want to bring it back to aliens for a minute because that was our
Yes,
topic. And
we want.
we've gone outside of that a ways.
Or have we?
I'm of
Maybe
the
we haven't.
convinced
Maybe we
that
haven't.
we probably are unique eukaryotic manifestations of a particular primate species and are the first ones to ever develop the ability to perceive the cosmos in the way that we do. That's my position.
Okay. And
Can you repeat it? Can you repeat it?
Well, it's basically that we are unique and there's nobody else out there.
there's no one out there.
They're not here. They've never been here. And we are it, basically, as
We're
far
it.
as consciousness developed at this level in this particular species. And that makes us very special in the cosmos because we can perceive the cosmos. I was just doing
Okay.
some calculation earlier today, with the help of my little assistant information processing tools. I wouldn't call it artificial intelligence by any stretch of the imagination,
Modern
but it's
computing.
information processing. We've only figured out in this particular century how big the universe is. And I'm not even sure if we're right, but
Okay.
right
Yeah.
now, we never knew that before.
You're expressing the Carl Sagan theory, and the Carl Sagan theory is the reply to the Fermi paradox, actually. And it's also Terence McKenna. It's like the most evolved organism in the universe right now is laying behind our eyes, which I like very much as a hypothesis. Now, bringing it back to the aliens,
Pale blue
one thing
dot.
that we didn't, huh?
The pale blue dot theory, yeah.
The pale blue dot theory, exactly. The pale blue dot. Now, going back to the aliens, there's one thing that we didn't talk about aliens, which is what if aliens have arrived and they are mixed between us, and some of us are aliens and some of us are not aliens? Okay, to this point, I am amazed, particularly in this period, as to the difference in temperament in some people. Although we've spoken a lot about empathy in our previous podcast, I'm going to start with empathy, but it's not the only one. I am amazed at the fact that some people have regulated their empathy to a minimum, and therefore they are psychopaths. And whereas some other people have regulated their empathy to the maximum, and therefore they are naive, but they're also seers, and they're also telepathic, and they're also generous, and they're also virtuous, And so I am always amazed at the fact as to how even people that we know very well, our friends or members of our family, can have such different reactions to a certain set of coincidences. the experiment of the burning house is very interesting, which is there is a burning house, and there's a baby on the second floor which is about to die. And so there's three reactions. One is the hero reaction, the guy that immediately jumps into the building and tries to save the baby and probably dies on the process. Then there is the fireman attitude, which is to organize the people, prepare the setup, bring on the truck, and find the best solution to save the baby. And then there is the guy who begins screaming, who's guilty for this? Who's to blame for this? Let's sue somebody. And that person enters into paralysis or panic and does nothing. Okay, I always find funny how come in front of such a clear situation, which is how do we save the baby? It is a problem. It is a problem to be solved. How come so many different reactions happen? And at times I feel that some people are very soulful and some people are very soulless. So I want to bring into the conversation the discussion of the soul, which is, do aliens have a soul? Because at times when I feel that a person is alien, it's a soulless person. It's a person that really doesn't even feel human.
Yeah. There's no reason to believe that. I mean, an alien species could have completely different psychology from what we know and think of, and they could be considered psychopathic, perhaps, in the way we define it. There's no reason to believe. There's no reason to think that they necessarily would not be. I mean, I think a psychopathic race would have a hard time developing technologically because they would self-destruct, I would think, but that's not a guarantee, I don't believe. So I think you potentially could have a race of psychopaths, if you will, that is technologically advanced, cruising through the universe, destroying everything they touch, sort of thing. And there's no reason to think that is impossible. That's an interesting thought. But one thing I also want to talk about aliens is aliens on Earth below the sea. So we came out of the oceans as people. What if there were other beings that remained behind and he continued to evolve as we did outside of the oceans? The deep sea, we have only sent probes, one or two, to the very deepest depths. And the oceans are so large compared to the land that we could easily have missed an alien, an intelligent species at the bottom of the ocean. And they would not necessarily know that there's anything above them. I mean, they would, to them, the upper ocean would be like the upper universe, the outer edges of our atmosphere are to us, or so that their signals couldn't penetrate, ours couldn't penetrate there. They may not realize that there's a world up there with intelligent beings on it, just as we don't. So what do you think about that hypothesis? Plausible? I completely agree.
There are theories that they're coming and going from the Bermuda Triangle already. I mean, that was in the book by, what was that guy's name who wrote the Bermuda Triangle? Berlitz.
I mean, you have the Abyss. You have movies like the Abyss. Movies like the Abyss and things. Where you guys have seen the Abyss, but that's sort of the premise that you have these beings living down in the great depths.
Or they don't have. Think about scale too. Remember Men in Black? How something could be very, very small, but actually very, very important. So you have the galaxy
We live at a certain scale.
rule.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
there's
all kinds of different ideas we've had as a species about these things, while entertaining ourselves to death and soiling our nest. So whether they're aliens or not, we need to work on cleaning up our messes, in my view, and think about the people we are with the intelligence we have, and how the psychopathy, the sociopathy, which we exhibit as a species, and how we can clean that up. We're projecting it out to aliens right now, but we need to bring it on home. It's my view. Go ahead.
Very utilitarian. You're very utilitarian viewpoint, and I hear that a lot. And I think you're right. I think you're partly right. I do think it's naive to not think about those things, but I think you're right that the focus needs to be on us, the things that we know are real and our problems that we can solve.
And we could explore the oceans. I think that's a good idea. And the inner part of the earth too, like go down into caverns.
I have a personal experience about your hypothesis, Daniel, which is I am a licensed scuba diver, and I licensed like 27 years ago. And on one of my first immersions, I went down and I found an octopus. Okay. And the octopus immediately found me attractive, and he went to me and he attached to me here on the plectrum, okay? And I was a little bit nervous, but the octopus was, I mean, this is a cephalopod. that has
Yes.
8 legs and not 2. So it's a very weird creature. You don't accept.
Yes, it is.
You can't really figure out. You can't predict its language due to the difference in the body. You know. I know that you're gonna hit me because you have 2 hands, but if you have 8 hands, I have no idea what the hell
Yeah,
you're gonna do.
but they occupy
So,
are considered one of the most intelligent sea creatures for
so
sure. They've demonstrated.
The blue-ringed
I know you
ones are
will
poisonous.
like this example. So the point is the following: the octopus stuck to me, okay,
Mhm.
and the octopus raised his head and began looking at me, okay, looking at me. And I looked at him through my visors, and I had a very good look into his eyes, okay. And what I saw in the eyes of the octopus was astounding. I saw a conscientious being that was trying to communicate with me somehow, that was totally pacific. It had no intention to make any kind of aggression to me. He just was curious and he wanted to communicate through the eyes, which I found amazing. This is one of the most incredible experiences I've had because it's one of the connection between me and the octopus was higher than the connection that I have with a cat or a dog. I really felt a brain there with the capacities that I had, but instead of moving out of the water, it decided to evolve in the oceans, and therefore he got the body that he got. Now, after I had this experience, I read some other things. There's a famous text by Terence McKenna about cephalopods and about the fact that if there is a brain that is similar to the human brain, it's the brain of the octopus. Then the documentary about the octopus came out. I don't know if you saw it. It's an Oscar-winning documentary.
Yeah.
Very good documentary. And now lately I have seen this guy that is training the octopus to play the piano, which is also very interesting because he has a lot of hands to play. So
Yeah, right.
So at the same time, when I have this experience that I'm talking to a person that doesn't feel human, I get precisely the opposite feeling, that the eyes are empty, that there's
right.
nothing behind the eyes.
Shark
The
eyes.
eyes are like, shark eyes, Ted Bundy eyes, psychopath. Ted Bundy is an incredible example because you see, or Charles Manson, you see their eyes and there's nothing behind them. So there is
Yes.
a connection. As old poetry says, the eyes are the mirror of the soul,
Windows.
and therefore there is something in the eyes that has to do with conscience, and that has to do with the fact as to whether you recognize the other as an other. And I sincerely recognize the octopus as another being that could talk to me somehow.
Yeah, that's an interesting, and our friend, the consciousness. I have a brain fart
So
now.
now I extend this to aliens. There is a difference if the alien comes and the alien has a human shape, like a trunk and 4 extremities, than if the alien comes out and the alien is like an octopus. Our reaction to it would be totally different. The way that we would try to communicate would be very, very puzzling, I would say, because they're difficult to read. The body has a lot to do, and the way how we read and how we predict. Now I will take your prediction hypothesis. So I wonder if basically that would explain that if aliens visited us, it makes a lot of sense that they would assume a human shape because they would want to communicate with us in the best possible way.
Yeah, that's a good point. And Julian Jaynes, of course, in bicameral mind, is hypothesized that we first recognize consciousness in others before we recognize it in ourselves. In fact, that's how we became conscious, by postulating consciousness in others. Sort of the reverse of Descartes, who speculated, who looked internally for consciousness first. In his model, we look to others first, and that's how we
Julian
became.
Jaynes, yeah.
Yeah, it's an interesting.
It's a very interesting book.
Very interesting book.
The Origin of Consciousness and the Breakdown of the Bicameral Mind was the title, if anybody missed it.
Great book, very good book.
I know the book, but I prefer more the hypothesis of McKenna, that we grew consciousness once we began incorporating into the diet the mushroom.
Yeah,
that's Terence McKenna, right? And the DMT experiences he talks about the, what did he call those, mechanical, like
the elves.
Yeah, those are just machine elves. That was it.
Machine elves.
Yeah, that it would show up and say, "We just look at this and look at that," and I love that.
Have you
presentation.
had this? Have you had this experience?
No. And I'm a high, I've tried a lot of things in my life and I have not had those experiences. What I have had is the feeling of ego death and under certain circumstances. And that took a while to pass off. I was pretty sure I had, and Dan, you had this too. I don't know if you've had it, Bruno, where you thought you actually did die and that you were persisting in an afterlife of sorts, right?
Yep. I was convinced I was dead for 6 months after I came
Yeah,
out
it
of hospital.
lasted about
I got
3 or
out of
4
hospital.
months for me.
It was the most
I,
bizarre
no,
thing ever.
I haven't had near death experiences, but
Hmm.
I had dream telepathy, like, and I've had also like the feeling that I can go in and out of a dream, which is interesting. But I want to go back to the elves, which is
Okay.
when I had the encounter with the elves, it was very similar to the encounter with the octopus in the sense that I saw a being that maybe was imaginary, maybe not, but I had the feeling that this being was communicating with me, was trying to was playful, certainly, was playing tricks, was bugging me, was explaining to me that the way that I build reality is totally wrong. There's other ways to create reality, and the elf shows you how to create reality, how to make the visual landscape whatever you volition becomes visuality. What you want to see is what you see. This is basically what the elf teaches. And what I found amazing is that afterwards, after I came out of the experience and then I began studying psychonautics, I noticed that a lot of people have the same hallucination. A lot of people do see the elves, and a lot of people describe the behavior of the elf in similar ways. A trickster, a guy that is making fun of you, but also a guy that is trying to push you somewhere, that is trying to drive you somewhere, that is trying to tell you, follow me, follow me. And then so this is another hypothesis of the alien. Maybe the alien is a creature that is already here, but in another dimension, and we can access that dimension, and we will be surrounded by aliens.
You guys
That's
remember
interesting.
that Star Trek episode where the people are just moving a little bit faster than everybody else, and so they
That
hear
happened.
buzzing, they're buzzing in their ears, and they think it's just like a fly or something, but it turns out they're accelerated people that are just like a time have been accelerated in time slightly.
I know that one.
It's a
And
fascinating
it
episode.
happened to us, Dan, one time when we were closing up and you started going, and to me and to you, I
That's
was
where I
going,
live.
yeah.
I live in it, and I live in that dimension. The faster.
Did you slow down enough to be here with us today? So
Yes,
nice of you. And
I
by the way,
try. It's
guys, we
hard.
have run over the hour a little bit, but
Yeah,
I
yeah.
did want to say in the chat I put in there that we're getting close to wrapping up. And we have to pick a topic for next week. Any questions, please let us know. Our viewers will leave open.
Yeah, let's give a couple of minutes to the listeners to see if they throw some subject that we can tackle on next time.
Well, we did get from manifestation is a total real thing, but you better be careful what you ask for and how you ask, because Nate the blind stonecutter has definitely got what he asked for, but not the way he wanted it.
Yeah, that's the Nate guy, right? Yeah, I like
The
that. I
basis,
like that topic.
the basis of every Twilight Zone episode ever.
I like that topic. Summoning spirit, summoning whatever
I
you
like it
want
too.
to see. Yeah.
I'm surprised that you don't know
Should we
more.
pick that one up?
I'd like to talk more about the simulation hypothesis. I'm surprised you're not more educated on that topic. I'll have to send you some materials because it's highly relevant and many people believe it seriously believe it in high
Yeah,
positions of power. And it's influential and it's impactful big time on the world because that belief has implications for how you act in the world and the things
right.
you do. And
How
it's,
empathetic you are, right?
if you have that belief and you really believe it, you can lead to some dangerous places big time. So that's worth talking about, I think. And I created a whole
Yeah.
fake church around
It sort of ties.
simulation.
It sort of ties to some of my belief in Mayor Baba's teachings, which are this is all a stage play. You really don't have to worry. Be happy.
That's one way to look at it, but the other way to look at it is it doesn't matter what you do. There's no
Right?
ethics because it's all a simulation anyways. So I'm going to do whatever I want to do or can do to have my advantage.
And that's the
And no,
same thing,
and
right?
there's no
Don't worry,
ethics.
be happy.
Well, no ethics, and I don't care if I hurt anybody because they're not real people. Just like me, I'm not real either. So and people believe that. I mean, seriously, they believe
And
it.
people depersonalize. Derealization is a thing.
if you believe we're living in a simulation, it's easy to depersonalize everything because everything is depersonalized because we're all artificial. We are all computer code.
Just like the old song says, nothing really matters.
Right? There's no God, there's no heaven, there's no hell, there's no anything in the simulation.
Imagine.
So you will be educating us on simulation on our next podcast.
Well, let me send some materials to you, Bruno. See what you think. If you're there's one man who's sort of the god of this area who started the whole thing. He's a philosopher from Oxford.
One other thing got mentioned was Rupert Sheldrake. We just mentioned him in passing, and I need to dig more into what he says. And there was something about morphology that I think Rupert was onto. Am I right? Do you guys know?
Say it again.
Rupert Sheldrake and morphology. Do you all
Oh
recognize
yeah,
it? Whoa, Dan's
yes.
gone.
Dan is gone. He got bored.
Well, we can wrap it up. But that was another
has
thing I wanted to pull in. Sheldrake. Yeah.
We have this new thumbnail for our podcast, and I liked it very much because among many things that Sheldrake has done, this theory about morphic fields and morphic resonance is very interesting. Which is
morphic resonance.
the hypothesis. It can connect to the simulation thing that Jungius was speaking about. But it's basically the idea is where are our memories stored? Are our memories stored in the brain, or are they outside and we can go and fetch them and bring them here? Which is sort of a destruction of the hypothesis of the ego, because if our memories are there to be accessed, then we can be any person.
Yep. I don't know. But Bruno, it's been a delight as usual. We are about 6 minutes over now. I've sent Dan a thing in case he didn't mean to leave, but he might have. And we can wrap it. Any last comments?
So see you next Thursday.
Very good. Or what Friday, depending on what my schedule is. Actually, I think I'm open Thursday, so let's try to make it Thursday. Have a great barbecue, by the way. Enjoy.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, my neighbors are already preparing it. So see you. Bye-bye. Bye, listeners. Thank you for joining.
Yeah, thank you all for joining. Bye.